So job design essentially refers to the extent to which various roles or responsibilities in an organization will be deliberately structured and coordinated to make effective use of limited work resources. It also seeks to provide task variety and enhance the autonomy of the job incumbents with the view of reducing boredom or idleness. So when we talk about job design, it essentially refers to that. Now, the redesigning component of work systems can also be referred to the extent to which an already designed job, which is failing to attain its targets or its goal, is further recalibrated to progress towards the right path. So let's say previously the office space was designed for about 5 or 6 people to make use of the limited resources. And we realize that it is still not yielding fruitful results. Then the redesigning can come in. The redesigning will mean that we are retouching what we already touched on previously. So essentially, we'll be looking at the normal job designs that you are familiar with, such as job rotation, job enlargement, enrichment, except that this time around, we are not only interested in the individual things that employees or workers do, but we are also going to integrate it with what actually the workers need and how the jobs that they perform may interfere or interact with other jobs. So by the end of this lecture, we envisage to cover some thematic areas, including the individual and organizational factors that affect the designing of a job. In other words, if we are going to design the workplace to integrate job rotation, what are some of the reasons or the underpinnings that will fuel such an initiative? And if we decide to go in for job enrichment too, what are some of the factors that will propel us to do that? Then we will also gain an appreciation of the need for fit between individuals and the job and how much such fit can be achieved. So why is it that the knowledge, skills, and abilities of an individual must always fit the position or the specific job that the person is executing? And when there is a misfit, what are some of the consequences? Then you also have to understand the reasons why organizations outsource and offshore some of their services to other outside agents and the pros and cons of utilizing some of these options. Then you also gain an appreciation of the role of HR in mergers and acquisition. So specifically, the strategic components of some of these job designs elements, not only in multinational enterprises, but in domestic enterprises too, can take the form of outsourcing of some of your services to another party so that you can concentrate on the most lucrative ones, offshoring, whereby you move some of your production or services to a different location where the price for labor over there is quite cheap, and maybe the proximity to source of raw material too may be abundant. Then another strategic way of job designing is either going by the merging or acquisition of a struggling enterprise into your edifice. Then the last one is that we will also try to look at the impact of technology on designing of jobs and work. Okay. So essentially, our focal job for today is to look at how work systems can be designed. But in order to fully appreciate how work systems can be designed, we need to understand what workers do. And by looking at what workers do, it will also inform why the job may be designed in a specific way. Then we also need to know what workers actually need in return for the services that they have rendered. And some of the key take-homes is that the employees are not only after financial incentives or the wages and salaries that they receive, but they are equally interested in other opportunities such as flexible work options, ability to balance their work with their non-work or family life, so work-life balance, and so on and so forth, and how the job that employees do interfere with other jobs, which may mean that the output of one employee becomes the input of another employee. And for that reason, if one is dragging his feet, then the other may also struggle in terms of attaining their accomplishments. So once you look at all these three facets in a holistic manner, then the designing of a job becomes a system in a sense that if one part of the system is malfunctioning, then the other parts will not also be able to deliver. So designing of work systems. Essentially, three primary considerations inform decision makers need to design a job. And what are these three considerations? It includes what the workers do, what the workers need, and how jobs interfere with other jobs within the organization. So the three primary considerations which informs the designing of a job. And then I'm a projective also, what the workers do, what the workers need, and how job interferes with other jobs. So if you are going to have any objectives this semester, these are some of the things that can drop. I can deliberately bring these three and throw in another word or concepts just to throw you off. So when you are reading, pay attention. So these are the three considerations. We are going to take them one by one. What the workers do. That's what the workers do. Essentially, it refers to the core mandates of every employee as far as their job description is concerned. And the core mandate of every employee has not been static. If you trace the contribution of employees right from the agrarian societies to what we have now. So one of the major challenge in allocation of resources and also specification of tasks and responsibilities for employees is how to apportion them. So those who assign these responsibilities need to ensure that employees are not overwhelmed by their jobs. And at the same time, they have to make sure that the employees have sufficient work to keep them busy and productive. And sometimes too, if the employee feel that the quantum of job they are doing is not enough and it's not challenging enough, it may even demoralize them. So beyond the titles and the content that comes with every job, it is also important that we realize that the kind of job that employees do is a relative source of status or power to them. So if you are the CEO of a particular company, that title alone symbolizes your status in that organizational environment. And it also communicates the sort of power that you have over your other subordinates. And if you are the chief security of an organization, it also communicates the power and the status that you have in there. So when it comes to designing the jobs of individuals, in relation to the entire organization, several strategies are available. When it comes to the designing of jobs for individuals in relation to their employment contracts, several strategies are available. But the differences in the adoption of these strategies may depend on whether you are in the service sector or you are in the manufacturing or industrial sector. So, unlike in the manufacturing or industrial sector, where things are done in a mundane or in a repetitive manner. So you can liken what I'm saying to an assembly line whereby individuals are expected to be either packing, arranging, or fitting one object into the other. In the service industry, it is more or less like a knowledge economy where individuals do not work with their physical strength, but they rely much more on their ability to reason and also use their knowledge or expertise. So depending on the industry where you find yourself, then the strategy which informs how your job is designed may also differ. So those that are responsible for... Hello, can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
So those that are responsible for designing jobs and work systems need to fully assess the KSs required by the organization to execute their task now and the possible tasks that will be accomplished in future. And they must also be thinking about the integration of technology in the execution of such jobs in the future. So earlier approaches to work system design focus on individual employees' jobs. And when I say earlier approaches, I'm referring to right after the transitioning from the agrarian to the industrial revolution. Yeah, hello. Yeah, hello. Oh, okay. So don't worry, I'm recording. You will get everything, okay?
All right.
Right after class, I'll share the recordings with you. So the earlier approaches to work system, and by earlier approaches, I'm referring to the era where there was a swift transitioning from the agrarian society into an industrial society. Agrarian society was that society where majority of the global economy depended on agriculture. So they were predominantly farmers on large plantations. And very few people specialized in the industry, whereby they added value to some of these agricultural products. So during that transitional phase where the industry started emerging, they adopted I don't know if you remember scientific management system. So they were predominantly influenced by Frederick Tyler, who was a trained engineer, and for that matter, he prescribed that in order for the industries to get higher levels of profits, they needed to retool or recalibrate human beings to work like machines. And so around that era, they prescribe work systems with jobs that have very narrow task assignments. That's giving rise to the term job specialization, which means that when you were hired during this industrial revolution era and you were given a task, you had only a narrow task assignment, which meant that you may be responsible for only packaging of the product. You may be responsible for maybe putting the cork on the top of the bottle. You may be responsible for just placing the label on the box, or you may be responsible for just packing the boxes. So that was the earliest form of job design that was introduced, and that was called job specialization, which simply meant that there was higher level of division of labor, and everyone was accountable for performing a specific task. That is job specialization. Now, these systems attempted to promote efficiency in industrial operations by allowing workers to specialize in particular tasks and gain higher levels of competence in their work. And jobs had limited number of tasks assigned that required little thought but precise execution. So the point I'm trying to communicate over here is that during the initial experimentation of this job specialization, they required people that were very much energized, strong, and also muscular, but required people to use a lot of their thought process in executing their tasks. So as much as possible, once you are strong enough to work in the industry and you are also strong enough to specialize in one aspect of the industry to deliver to their satisfaction, you are good to go. There was no need for you to think and innovate how the industry was supposed to work. The system was already calibrated, and your role in there was to just come and contribute your quota as far as what you are expected to do is concerned. So, although these efforts seemed very much simplified in the eyes of those, like in our eyes now, because we'll be thinking about why you will not want people to innovate or bring their own initiative when they are working in an industry. So although we may see it as something that looked very much simple in the era when they were doing it, because of the precision with which they followed through, they were able to achieve higher levels of productivity and efficiency. And indeed, as we speak, there are a number of organizations that still use this job specialization initiative or job design in an attempt to attain higher levels of profitization and efficiency. So as we speak, UPS is one of the service industries that still uses job specialization extensively. So job specialization can be a viable strategy for the design of work systems in organizations that require higher level of efficiency and cost minimization in order to compete effectively. So what job specialization simply means is that in that kind of job design, every member in the organization will have a specific role to play. And that's the role that the individual will be playing is so narrow to the extent that they will have no room to do any other thing. So their job for the rest of their career life will be to be performing only that particular task. So if we take a water bottling company as an example, job specialization will mean that one person will have to be pumping the water into the bigger tank where the distillation will be taking place. Then another person's job will be making sure the water is channeled into the various bottles. Another person will be making sure that the bottle will have corks properly sealing it. Then another person will be putting it into their boxes and so on and so forth. So that will be job specialization in the strict sense of it. Now, over time, the excesses of job specialization meant that after maybe you may end up finishing your task very early, and because your contract stipulates that that is the only thing you are supposed to do, you may be lying down idle and feeling bored without having anything to engage you or anything to stimulate you. And that can be a little bit demoralizing if you are the type that enjoys working a lot. So due to some of these excesses, it paved the way for other things to be experimented as far as the job designs are concerned. So that gave room for job enlargement. So job enlargement simply means that you are providing individuals whose job scope was previously narrow, quite wider one. Okay, so job enlargement provides some variety of tasks by increasing the number of tasks, activities, or jobs that help to alleviate boredom of highly specialized work. So to say assembly line, assembly making, if for a particular day, the bottling activities is exhausted and you feel idle or bored, you can switch to maybe the packaging side and still assist them to continue doing the job. And that will be a typical example of job enlargement, which means that you are not going to get any extra pay, but what you'll be doing is that as and when your services are needed in other units or in other parts of the production line, you can be called upon to assist, especially when you are currently not occupied by any task. So that will be job enlargement. For that reason, job enlargement can be construed as horizontal loading. Job enlargement can be construed as horizontal loading in the sense that the individual's task is increased horizontally. Say you can horizontal, it means you are moving from left to right like this. So once you are increasing the person's task, maybe previously it was from here to here, but now you have expanded it to this particular point. You have increased it horizontally. So another name for job enlargement is horizontal loading. A variation of job enlargement is job rotation, wherein the employee is moved across different specialized positions within the same organization. So when you vary job enlargement a little bit, then you get job rotation. And in job rotation, the individual employee is moved from sometimes a department to another department. It may also be from one job within the same department to another job. It may even be from one region or branch to another branch. Now, both techniques of designing, that is both the enlargement and rotation, rest with providing employees with more variety in tasks that they perform. So the similarity between job enlargement and job rotation is that you want to kill the boredom and the idleness that comes with job simplification or the job specialization. So in order to provide task variety, you can introduce job enlargement or job rotation. Hello, can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me? Hello? Hello, can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, sir. Please. Hello,
okay.
Sir.
Yeah, okay. Let me continue. So, so the similarity between both job enlargement and job rotation is that it provides room for employees to experience task variety. And that is able to kill the boredom or the idleness that is usually associated with job specialization or the job simplification. But how do they differ? So unlike, although these approaches add variety, they do not necessarily involve giving employees more responsibility. So on say level 200, Rebecca chose in job enlargement, and in job rotation, they are given additional responsibility. So when things go wrong under job enlargement or job rotation, you do not hold those individuals responsible for it because they are not being rotated by their own directives. In other words, it is someone who is commanding them to be rotated or to be given an additional responsibility. So you can't hold them responsible when things go haywire. So that is a new element I'm adding to what you learned in level 200 or is it 300 or so. So this does not mean that the efforts to allow or require workers to perform additional tasks are necessarily useless. So essentially what we are trying to say is that you are just giving them, or you are exposing them to variety of tasks to kill their boredom and also to get value for money. You don't want them to be sitting down idle and not contributing to organizational success, but they will be taking or drawing money home. That is what you want to avoid. Now, employees who assume responsibility for additional tasks can have their understanding of the organizational production process enhanced and have a greater appreciation of how their specialized jobs contribute to overall organization. Just a minute. Okay. So job rotation has a long-standing practice for senior executives. So here we are linking it to when we usually adopt job rotation as a type of job design in an organization. So it has a long-standing practice for senior executives who benefits from gaining a sense of not only how different functions operate, but how they contribute to the entire organization. So if you have promising candidates, or if you have senior executives that you are grooming for other, just give me a minute. So I was explaining that job rotation is actually a good avenue that can be used in training not only senior executives, but promising candidates that also aspire to occupy higher positions in an organization in the future. For senior executives, job rotation can be used to give them a better appreciation of how the various departments or units in the organization work, so that when they eventually emerge as the head of a particular organization, issues that are brought before them can be discerned from the experience that they got during their rotations, which means that from time to time, they may be moved from, let's say, the HR department to the marketing department. Then they may be paired with the procurement department for some time, and later on with the accounting and finance department. That would be a typical strategy of using job rotation to empower senior executives. The same can be done for individuals that we construe as promising candidates. So essentially, it can facilitate the professional development of such individuals. And what we mean by professional development is that in order to specialize in one aspect, even in HR, you don't only have to be doing the administrative stuff that we do in the offices. Sometimes, as an HR person, you must be able to use simple accounting ratios to discern whether your company is doing well or is not doing well. Okay, so for that reason, you can partner with, when we are using job rotation, you can work in the finance department for a while to understand how they are able to use some of these metrics in determining whether the company is making profits, it is breaking even, or it is actually struggling to survive. And once you become knowledgeable in this regard, when they are telling you lies, you can see through their actions. So let me see if I've left something else. The job rotation is increasingly being seen as a key means for HR professionals to further their career. Okay. In order for HR to be a true strategic partner, HR executives must understand fully not only the functional aspect of HR management, but also the nature of the organizational business. So if you're an HR and you do not know how to analyze the financial records of your organization, then you may end up being lied to by your accounting and finance people almost all the time. But at least if you know how to use the ratios to compare the current assets and liabilities and decipher whether the company is actually making profits or making some losses, then before they even come to you, you already know you must have crossed your T's and dot your I's. So one of the best ways to obtain this understanding is to work within the organization in an operating division outside the HR function. But funny enough, for many years, HR has developed programs that rotates employees across functions such as marketing, finance, operations, accounting, providing those in rotations with a better grasp of the entire organization and an appreciation of how individuals' functions contribute to overall strategy. HR executives, however, are usually not part of such programs. So what I'm trying to communicate over here is that once a HR department will be creating a roster or a list of individuals that are supposed to be placed on job rotation programs. But or more as HR departments needed, they will relegate themselves to only the administrative role. And they end up becoming an island that has no knowledge about what is happening in other departments, apart from respects where they will be consulted for some level of assistance. So to participate in an organization's success at the highest level, HR executives need to avail themselves of opportunities to learn the business by actually participating. So essentially, just as other members of an organization at the various units or departments avail themselves or are taking through job rotation to learn the core business of the organization very well, HR employees or HR personnel must also dance to that kind of tune in order to be well informed about the core business of an organization. So that can be attained through job rotation. So this is a case study to illustrate job rotation, and it actually is a case about General Electric. So someone should volunteer to read for us. Who would like to read? Quickly. Hello, can you hear me? Hello? Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, sir. And the line was breaking, sir.
Okay, so someone should read the case quickly, then we'll proceed.
General Electric has always been a leader in employee development among large organizations. For many years, entry-level HR managers have been placed in a 2-year job rotation program on joining the organization. New hires spend 3 8-month rotations within the HR function. Although they might end up in different business units or divisions, these rotations were still within the HR domain and confined to areas such as labor relations, compensation, staffing, and benefits. The goal of this program was to develop strong HR generalists who could eventually become senior HR executives within GE. In the mid-1990s, GE added cross-functional rotations to the mix, whereby individuals could leave HR for at least one rotation, working in areas such as audit, marketing, finance, or operations. This rotation program can continue throughout the employee's career as new skills, competencies, experiences, and knowledge bases are sought. HR executives in GE now have far greater credibility among their non-HR peers, given this experience, and are also better able to understand the business and develop HR solutions to key business challenges faced by divisions.
All right. So one question that I will ask you is that why is it being claimed that HR executives in GE have a much better credibility among their non-HR peers? So ponder about that question. You may not know where you'll find it again. Should I ask the question again?
Yes, sir.
So why is it that the HR executives in General Electric are characterized as having better credibility among their non-HR peers. So what sort of superior quality do they have that their peers do not have? That is the question. So who would like to attempt the question? Who would like to attempt? Okay. Then let's make progress. So we are still on what workers do. So far, we've looked at job specialization, we've looked at job enlargement, job rotation. We are now on job enrichment. What is another name for job enlargement? What is another name for job enlargement?
Horizontal loading.
Okay. So job enrichment initiatives involves going beyond merely adding tasks to employee jobs. It actually involves increasing the amount of responsibility employees have. So I'm explaining job enlargement. I said you are just adding additional load to the quantum of jobs or tasks that is expected to be performed, or you are increasing the task variety, but it does not come with responsibility. So if things do not go as planned, that you can't hold them responsible for it because you are still experimenting to see if the individual will be able to master it and execute it. But with job enrichments, it comes, the task variety comes with what? The responsibility. And the work is designed so that the employees have significant responsibility for their own work. For that reason, the employee becomes more accountable for his or her own performance because responsibility for quality and productivity that were previously assigned to employees' supervisor are now redirected to the employee. So under job enrichment, the individual may even end up being promoted to a supervisory position or to a higher position that was previously superseding him or her. And this process of reassigning what were formerly supervisory responsibilities has been commonly characterized as vertical loading. Vertical loading in the sense that you will now be responsible for what is even above you. So it may, that is why we say you may end up being promoted. Okay. To assist organizations in designing enriched jobs, a model was developed to illustrate the relationship between the redesigned jobs and ultimate performance and behavioral outcomes. And that is what we call the job characteristics model. So the job characteristics model simply suggests that there are 5 core job characteristics that can impact certain employee psychological states, which will further impact work-related outcomes. So if you want to design jobs that are very much enriched, research is saying you can follow a model that we call job characteristics model. And this job characteristics model suggests that there are 5 core job characteristics which impact the way employees experience some psychological states. And this psychological states further impacts how they work. So what are these 5 core job characteristics? It includes skills variety. It also includes task identity. It includes task significance. it includes autonomy, and lastly, feedback. So according to the job characteristics model, if you want to design jobs to achieve job enrichment, then you must throw in the variety of tasks. You must make the job in such a way that it can be executed using varied skills. So it shouldn't be a task that can only be achieved using, let's say, verbal skills, but it should be a task that can equally be attained using your numeracy skills or the number of experience that you've acquired over time, your interpersonal relationship skills, and so on and so forth. Now, once the job requires you to tap into some of these varied skills that may be flourishing in you, then it can end up becoming what? An enriched job. The second one is the task identity. The task identity, and which refers to the extent to which the work allows an employee to complete a whole or identified piece of work. So if at the end of the day, the individual can quantify that they have done X amount of the job or Y amount of the job, then that can also pave the way for the job to be enriching the individual. Then the third one is task significance. Now, to what extent does the individual perceive meaningfulness or importance in the task that they are performing? So if the perception is that the work that they are doing does not really contribute to organizational success, or it is needless, then it may never lead up to the attainment of enrichment. On the contrary, if the task is perceived to be very much instrumental to the success of the organization, then it can lead to what? Enrichment. Then autonomy, the fourth one. When jobs are designed to provide the job incumbent or the employee some amount of discretion or power to take decisions and actions, then that can lead to enrichment, and the reverse is true. And the last one is feedback. To what extent does the performer, that is the employee performing the job, gets feedback or gets response from other onlookers, which may be peers or supervisors? If the job have room for feedback to be provided or some form of communication to be transmitted as far as targets that are being championed are required, then it can pave the way for the job to be what? Enriched. So that is what the job characteristics model stipulates. That if you are able to throw in these 5 core job characteristics in a given job, then the chances that you can design an enriched job is high. So the model argues that work systems can be designed to enhance motivation, performance, and satisfaction, and also reduce absenteeism and turnover. In other words, the model is trying to argue that if you want to incentivize your employees by motivating them very well, and if you also want to encourage them to work very hard in terms of their performance and increase their level of satisfaction, but at the same time reduce the level of absenteeism and turnover in the company, then you have to go by following these 5 job characteristics. That is the core argument of the model. Now, so we have looked at essentially the aspects that designates what workers do. And this can be discerned through job specialization, job enlargement, job rotation, job enrichment. We are now going to look at what workers actually need. So we know what they do, but what do they need in return for what they are doing? The design of work system also needs to consider what workers need and what and want in order to carry out their job responsibilities. And universally, all employees do not work for the same reasons, whereas some may be working for monetary gains, others may be working for attention or companionship. And those of you that are familiar with Herzberg's two-factor theory or Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you realize that our wants and needs are not the same. And whereas my hygiene factor may be monetary, someone's hygiene factor may rather be the need for companionship or need for affiliation. So for that reason, we do not work for the same reason. But employers must consider a number of important universal considerations in designing work systems to ensure they are able to motivate and generate a more productive and happy workers. The first consideration is the demographics and lifestyle of the labor markets. The demographics and lifestyle of labor markets. And the kind of demographics side essentially refers to the age, gender, religiosity, ethnicity, marital status, and so on and so on of our workers. Workers' needs vary among and between those of different age groups, gender, race, religion, physical ability, sexual orientation, marital and family status. In fact, this very class, if I ask you to tell me what you want to attain, what you want to use your after completing your university, what you would use your certificate to do, you will tell me varied things. In fact, some of you will tell me it will not even add to a salary increment at your place of work. Others will also tell me that even if you are able to get an attestation letter now, it will affect how much you receive. So you will realize that you all need the certificate, but you need it for different things. Some may be using it to just upgrade and broaden their horizon, whereas others may actually need it to get some monetary or other incentives. So the same thing can be said about the general workforce in the labor markets. As far as the demographics is concerned, the needs of every employee vary as we move from one demographic attribute to the other. Now, to perform at peak levels, employees need to remain free from bias or prejudice in hiring, treatment, performance management, compensation, advancement decisions, and programs. And this diversity of workers' needs creates a significant challenge for allocating work in organization. So, what is it that workers need over here? Workers are expecting to be treated in a more justified manner when it comes to offering opportunities for promotion, offering opportunities for training and advancement, offering opportunities for performance management. They expect to be paid in an equitable manner. So if 2 or more people are doing the same job, they expect to be paid similarly. But if it happens that one employee is working much harder than the other, but they are all being rewarded in a similar manner, then it will be disincentive to the one who is working harder. Those are some of the simple things that workers need employers to be holding constant. Organizations also need to be more aware of employee needs for work-life balance. So work-life balance simply refers to the degree to which employees are able to strike a balance between their working and non-working life. So having worked for an organization from Monday to Saturday, it is expected that at least the weekend will be given to the employee in question to spend quality time with friends, family, or spend your own quiet time just to rejuvenate yourself. These are some things that employees expect their employers to be providing for them, and they actually need it because it helps them to hello, can you hear me? Hello? Good. Okay. So enjoying work-life balance, according to research, is related to the category of employees that end up becoming more satisfied, highly productive, and also more healthy. And this is so because they are not being overwhelmed with work activities, particularly during non-work hours. And they are also getting adequate time to not only rejuvenate, but also at least think about things outside the workplace, which boosts their level of sanity. Okay. So they also ask for much to be done for them when it comes to the issue of work-life balance. And according to research, all employees, but particularly younger employees, are far less loyal to their employers than they were generations ago. And there is a reason. Employers who design work systems that do not allow employees to have a balance they desire in their life activities will find the workers who not only are less committed to the organization, but who may also suffer from burnout and perform less than optimal levels. One recent survey found that 42% of working adults were willing to assume salary reduction in order to gain more flexibility in their working schedules. And 83% reported that flexibility in the working schedule is one of the most important factors considered when searching for a job or an employer. Now, this means that if the job is designed to allow some amount of flexibility, and what I mean by flexibility is that the job is designed in such a way that you may be able to carry it out from a remote location, maybe from your house at a cafe or at a restaurant, and still be able to achieve your targets. Once some of these things are integrated in the designing of the job, it ends up creating a more committed workforce. It also ends up creating individuals that are less likely to experience burnout, but can perform very high in terms of their optimal levels. And that also characterizes such an organization as an organization of choice, which will be highly sought after by talented individuals that are looking for alternative jobs to perform. But the question you need to ask yourself is, in our part of the world where scarcity of job is the order of the day, you may not have room to complain when your job does not even provide flexibility. Okay, so that is the other side of the coin. But in the developed economies or in certain sectors where the availability of the job is abundant, then you can be making some of these arguments. But in our part of the world, work-life balance is something that employees need, but they are not able to gain it as simple as I am explaining. Now, a third consideration that employees also need is by giving employees voice. The third one is granting them voice. So why do employees need their voice to be known? Research suggests that highly trained and skilled workers do not expect to be micromanaged. And when you say they are being micromanaged, it means that you are simply taking them for granted and expecting them to follow your dictates without questioning or trying to understand why they have to behave in a particular way. Especially the learned or the highly skilled ones are more experienced and they may be as knowledgeable as the supervisor who may be issuing the command. So they expect to use their training and experience to make a contribution to organization. And they also expect the organization to listen to their concerns. Systems for employee inputs are not only motivational to such employees, but they also allow the organization to fully utilize its existing human capabilities by encouraging employees to be involved. In the first place, why will you want to sideline your skilled and trained workers and be utilizing the views of selected few in the company? Under such dispensations, you realize that anytime you are trying to introduce some form of change or innovation, it will face a lot of restrictions or boycotting. So if you want to run a system where everyone will be well informed about the happenings in the company and also will have a say in what happens, then providing voice or involving employee in decision-making will be the way to go. In that way, even when eventually the decision that is being pushed by management is not the verdict of the employees, they will feel that they were consulted, except that their views were superseded by that of the ones from management. So employees also need their voices to be captured or to be taken whenever decisions are being taken. And the final consideration, as far as what employees need is concerned, is their health and safety. The health and safety of employees. Employees expect that in an attempt to contribute and work assiduously for the attainment of organizational imperatives, the working environment and the conditions of service must also be presented in a healthy and safe working environment. And when I talk about health and safety environment, I'm not only referring to the use of protective clothes or PPEs, but I'm equally referring to the sort of desk or tables that the employees sit on, the lighting system, the temperature of the room where they work. Now, all these considerations need to be properly thought through and implemented. Other than that, any injury that will occur as a result of some of these inactions of the organizations will result in the payment of huge damages. And in certain jurisdictions, it can be beside the fines, the company may be asked to even close or fold up. So employees are equally concerned, or they need their work environment or the workplace to be healthy and safe. Now, how the jobs interact with one another. So on say in designing the job, it has to be in a bundle. You first of all have to consider what the workers do and what they need, which we've done so far. But we are now going to look at how the jobs interact with one another at the workplace. So the final component of designing the job is an understanding of how individual jobs may have interdependence with one another, as well as how the individual jobs can or should interfere with one another. Now, it is not always the case that certain jobs will interdepend on each other. So it depends on the nature of the job that is being executed. And there are three traditional types of task interdependence. You have the pooled task interdependence, we have the sequential and the reciprocal. So the pooled one simply refers to the pooled interdependence is where the individual employees can work independently of each other in performing their tasks by utilizing some coordination of their activities. And this is usually characterized in the banking sector. So bank loan officers usually utilize pooled interdependence as a form of work system, whereby each loan officer works independently of the peers, yet work of each officer is coordinated within the rules and procedures outlined by the bank for lending. Even though I may be processing the loan for a particular client and another peer may also be processing the loan for another client, at the end of the day, all our efforts are coordinated by the policy which qualifies someone for a loan and which disqualifies another person for a loan. So it is this policy that will be coordinating our independent loan processing activity. So that will be the pooled interdependence kind of relationship. Then there is the sequential interdependence. So the sequential interdependence simply means that the work outputs of one individual becomes the work inputs of another individual. It could also be explained this way, that maybe the output of one department becomes the input of another department, which means that in order for the second department to commence their business, the first department must finish their work. So sequential interdependence refers to work that flows from one individual to another. It could be from one department to the other or one unit to the other, where one individual depends on the timely completion of the quality of work from another co-worker. So mass production assembly line workers usually utilize this kind of work system. And the output of one employee becomes the input of the next employee, like I mentioned. And so when one delays in the production line, then it will affect the series of stages that one is supposed to go through. For that reason, timely completion of work to be passed on is essential to avoid any slack and downtime, which creates inefficiencies and may strain relationship between co-workers. So what that means is that every part of the production chain must work with time, because a delay in one aspect of the production or the working procedures will affect the ripple effect on the other aspects of the production line, can be very much pervasive. Then reciprocal interdependence. Reciprocal interdependence. We are still on how the job interfere with each other. So when we say we are using the reciprocal interdependence work system, it simply means that the workflow is not linear. In other words, the work does not have to be done by one person. Then when it is finished, it's continued by another person, and so on and so forth, as it occurs in sequential, but it's rather random. So reciprocal means that everyone was set forth to be pursuing their targets simultaneously. So it employs some level of simultaneity in the job execution. Employees can process work so that it flows, so that its flow is not necessarily predicted and often spontaneous to suit an immediate situation. So teammates in a basketball or hockey team utilize reciprocal interdependence, as would the different departments within the hospital. So for different departments in a hospital, your friend is saying, the OPD will not say they are waiting for the theater room and answer the hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So if you pick the hospital situation, the various departments that are in there, the OPD, so OPD is what? Is it the outpatients departments? Then which other department do we have in the hospital? Hello, are you there?
Yes, sir.
The what? The surgery and what?
Dispensary.
Dispensary. Go on. Adebio.
Consulting room.
Consulting room and what again? So these specific departments that you mentioned, they do not do not wait for each other. In other words, whilst you are processing your folder, the consulting room personnel will not be waiting for you to come over there. In fact, someone may already be there attending, for them to be attending to the person's needs, whereas another person may also be at the pharmacy session taking his medicine and going home. So what I'm trying to communicate over here with the reciprocal interdependence is that each section of or each department or unit in the work system does not wait for the other to finish before they will commence their operation, but they autonomously operate in a simultaneous manner, depending on the problems that will be presented to them to resolve. So that would be a typical example of the reciprocal interdependence. In the overall university system, this morning I am teaching my class. You're right after my class, in fact, as I'm teaching, other lecturers are also teaching their classes, which you are not having. And they are using their own means, whether face-to-face or virtual, to deliver. They are not saying they are waiting for me to finish before they will commence their teaching. So that can also be construed as what? Reciprocal interdependence. Now, how jobs interfere with one another. So when the work of one employee interferes with another, concerns must be paid to designing the work system to allow as efficient a flow as possible. Now, higher levels of interdependence require higher levels of coordination and attention. And the reverse is true. Lower levels of interdependence will not, when people do not interdepend on each other in their operation, then you don't expect them to be coordinating with each other much more. Now, in designing work systems, organizations need to consider the implication that the level of the interdependence has for management practice that facilitate the control of processes and communication among the interdependent tasks. So an example, higher levels of interdependence may require more frequent meetings between employees, regular status reports, and more careful monitoring of performance and processes by management. So depending on the level where the interdependence may be originating from, in an attempt to design a fluid work system, you have to also consider possibilities for meetings that may be a necessity for the work system to flourish. You may also have to consider room for other segments of the interdependence to be relying on issues such as status reports in order to progress successfully. And so all these things will depend on the level of management where the interdependence is occurring. If it is occurring at the top level, then definitely some of these things in terms of frequent meetings and requesting for status reports before the order of the day is called upon may become necessary. So that is about how the jobs may interfere with one another. Now, ensuring an optimal fit. Optimal fit is a term or a concept which essentially try to match employees to their job on the basis of the knowledge, skills, and abilities that they possess. So when we say there is an optimal fit, it simply means that the jobs that employees have been matched to execute or perform are actually jobs that meet the needs and expectations of such an employee. In other words, when we find square pegs in square holes, whereby the experiences, the abilities and the knowledge of the employee is actually a perfect fit for the job that they are doing, then we say there is what? An optimal fit. The key strategic challenge in designing and staffing jobs is ensuring an optimal fit between the needs of employees and the needs of the organization. And ironically, employers are often very unaware of the needs and concerns of their own employees. In fact, a 2008 survey by the Society of Human Resource Management reported that the top needs of employees, as well as the perception of HR professionals as to their top needs. And they found out that of the top 4 employee needs, which in order include job security, benefits, compensation, and safety, only benefits appeared on the list of responses of HR professionals. In other words, the assumption of employers as far as the needs of their employees is concerned was what? Benefits. Into they thought, say, oh, as for compensation, they say we are already giving it to them. So there is, I don't think they will have a problem with it. It's never also crossed their mind the safety nature of the work environment. It also never crossed their mind how secured the job that the employees are performing is. They only felt that the only thing that employees will be concerned about will be what? The benefits. And that is quite serious, because if that is the perception that your employer is having about you, particularly through your HR department, then it means that they do not actually know you at all. Or they have lost touch with the realities as far as your conditions of service is concerned. So to ensure an optimal fit, the consequence of poor fit between employees and employers can be significant in terms of productivity, motivation, willingness to remain in the organization. So what we are trying to say over here is that whenever we talk about fit, it should not only be about getting employees with the right knowledge, skills, and abilities onto the right job, but it should also be equally about getting them a deserving reward. So are you motivating them well enough as compared to their peers in the same community of practice? And if you are doing so, is it incentivizing them enough to give out their best? And is it in a position to retain them in such a way that when competitors come on board to push them away, will they be willing to go or not? Once you are able to calibrate your fit indices around some of these motivating and productivity metrics, in addition to getting the individuals with the right knowledge, skills, and abilities onto the job, then we can say you have elevated the discourse about optimal fit to an appreciable level. So essentially, to achieve an optimal fit, you must be concerned about not only the needs of the employers, such as their ability to attain high levels of productivity, but you must equally be interested in the needs of employees in terms of giving them substantial compensation and benefits, healthy and safe working environments, job security, benefits, and so on and so forth. Strategies to redesign of work systems. So offshoring At this level, we're looking at just three: offshoring, outsourcing, and mergers and acquisition. Offshoring, outsourcing, mergers and acquisition. So when we say offshoring, what does it mean? It's okay, let's start with the outsourcing. Outsourcing refers to the degree to which an organization decides to contract or give out some of its organizational non-core work activities to an outside specialist who can do the job more effectively and often at a much cheaper cost than when it is previously done in-house. So when you say you are outsourcing a job, it simply means you are contracting it to a third party to do it for you, and this third party can predominantly do it more effectively, but at a cheaper cost than when you supposedly decide to do it on your own. Now, once an organization successfully identifies its core competencies and it does its cost-benefit analysis and it realizes that venturing into certain aspects of their production may rather cut into their profits, at that point in time, they can decide to outsource that production or service to a third party by contracting them to do it, so that they can concentrate on other equally important ventures. So the main reasoning behind outsourcing is to cut down costs and also operate in a more efficient or effective manner. Now, within HR, payroll and benefits are two areas that are frequently outsourced. So those of you that are working in the public sector, you realize that your payroll is not handled by the specific government agency or organization that you are working for. It is handled by Controller and Accountant General. Hello. 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 Hey, and the network in your crowd. Can you hear me? Hello. 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 Alberta, can you hear me? Can anyone hear me? So those of you working in the public sector, you will realize that issues about your payroll and the benefits that you receive are determined by Controller and Accountant General, because that is the statutory body that is more objective and competent in administering our payroll and benefit administration. Now, if these activities were left to our respective government bodies to be administering it, you can imagine some of the things that will be happening. How much some individuals will be cutting for themselves at the end of the month, and some of the sort of bonuses that they will be receiving, even though it is not perfect. The point I'm trying to drag home here is that within the activities of HR, most often than not, issues about payroll administration and benefit administration are frequently outsourced from the main organization to be administered by a third-party organization that usually does it objectively and dispassionately. So one recent study showed that 75% of organizations outsource at least one HR function. So Ghana, and apart from the payroll component, when it comes to recruitment and selection, particularly into the banking sector. So when it comes to security, the recruitment of security personnel into the banking sector, and tellers, for instance, these days it is being handled by third-party agents. So when you get to a banking premise, and who's will be a security uniform there, they are not necessarily an employee of the bank. Sometimes too, the tellers that you see handling customer complaints and their demands, they are actually not permanent staff of the bank, but they are contract staff of a third party. So I know Zenith Bank, for instance. I know a particular man where on why and I'll call retirement no set up the company to be doing recruitment for these banks. And because of the connection, he rather hires the tellers and then distribute them to the banks. Okay, so that may be a way of outsourcing some of the HR activities when it comes to recruitment. It may even take the form of training and development. It may also take the form of, like I mentioned, the payroll and benefits administration components. Now, in considering whether to outsource any function, either within or outside the HR department, decision makers need to consider not only the cost, but also whether the contractor can deliver a higher level of performance. So you should not only be moved by the ability to save money in terms of cost, but you must equally be concerned about the performance of the individuals that you are going to give the task to, where the control and responsibility will lie. So even after outsourcing, do you outsource it outright or you still retain some level of control? So our bank tellers now make what happens is that after the tellers are brought to the banks, the bank takes its time to to train them and give them thorough orientation. So the banks are subscribing to this strategy because if they hire you as a permanent staff, the amount of money that they will be incurring in terms of paying your salary, your other benefits, and what have you, will be different from what they will be paying to the third-party agent who is actually leasing these tellers to them. Ideally, the bank might have paid you, let's say, 2,000 cedis every month. But they can equally get your services through the outsourced agent for about, if I'm not exaggerating, about 1,000 cedis every month. And they'll be saving 1,000 cedis on each teller. So you can imagine the amount of money that the banks will be saving if they actually use this outsourcing strategy to be recruiting tellers into their organization. Now, these are actually individuals that are also very much experienced and knowledgeable. Some of them have first degrees, some may even be having masters. And because of scarcity of job, they just submit themselves through the outsourcing agents to come and work for the banks. So in terms of the performance and the competency of the tellers that come through the outsourcing avenue, there is no compromise over there. But at the end of the day, the banks are able to what? Save huge sums of money. The same can be said about the security men that they are using. Because bank now fall as on one personal security. The sort of benefits and other incentives that you'll be getting will be different from how much they are going to pay you if you come through an outsource agent like Hawks, Eagle Security, Tiger Eye, then. So that is it. Now, someone should read this particular paragraph for me and let's discuss it. The importance of the compliance aspect. Someone should read it for me. Hey, can you hear me?
The importance of the compliance aspect of, hello?
Yeah, go on.
The importance of the compliance aspect of outsourcing cannot be overemphasized. In October 2003, Walmart made headlines not for increasing its sales, profits, and market share, but for the raids by federal agents at 60 of its stores that rounded up 250 illegal workers. The employees were cleaners employed by a contractor to whom Walmart outsourced this area of its retail operations. 2 weeks later, a number of these workers turned around and sued both Walmart and the cleaning contractor, alleging that they did not receive overtime pay to which they were entitled and that taxes and workers' compensation premiums were not being withheld from their wages. Employers who outsource may be considered joint employers if they exert a certain level of control over these employees. An organization can give contractors complete latitude in their hiring and compensation practices, but the organization may still face legal liability if a court finds that the organization exerts control over the work performed by the subcontractor's staff.
Thank you very much. Please read it once more. And this time around, as she's reading, you should also follow and make your own notes because I'll be asking you some questions. Okay, we will have a short discussion. So read it again.
The importance of the compliance aspect of outsourcing cannot be overemphasized. In October 2003, Walmart made headlines not for increasing its sales, profits, and market share, but for the raids by federal agents at 60 of its stores that rounded up 250 illegal workers. The employees were cleaners employed by a contractor to whom Walmart outsourced this area of its retail operations. 2 weeks later, a number of these workers turned around and sued both Walmart and the cleaning contractor, alleging that they did not receive overtime pay to which they were entitled and that taxes and workers' compensation premiums were not being withheld from their wages. Employers who outsource may be considered joint employers if they exert a certain level of control over these employees. An organization can give contractors complete latitude in their hiring and compensation practices, but the organization may still face legal liability if a court finds that the organization exerts control over the work performed by the subcontractor staff.
Okay, thank you very much. So my first question was that Hello, I hope you can hear me.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Uh-huh.
Yes, sir.
Don't write the question. This one, we are just discussing it. Was it justifiable for the subcontractor to hire illegal workers to be working in capacities such as cleaners, cleaners, as cleaners for Walmart? Was it justifiable? Hello, did you hear my question? Did you get the question?
Again.
Okay. Okay. So was it justifiable for? Hello, can you hear me now? Maybe. Hello, can you hear me? Hello. Hello. Can you hear me now? Hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I'm asking the question again. Was it justifiable for Walmart to be sued for hiring illegal workers? Did you get the question? Hello, did you get the question?
I think you said, was it justifiable whether for Walmart to be sued for employing and hiring and illegal workers?
Exactly. Huh? Was it justifiable?
Illegal.
What will be your response? What will be your response? Are you there?
Sorry, others.
And when so it's straightforward, what is there to crack to say I'm your rocket science? Yes, Francisca. Yeah, Francisca, go on. Hello, Francisca. I thought you were trying to answer.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, hello. Yes, go on.
Hello.
Yeah, go on, Eric.
Yes, sir. I think it's not justifiable for them to be sued because if they were outsourced, if the recruiter were outsourced, probably to me, the company cannot be sued for maybe hiring an illegal thing. That maybe they can't be sued that maybe they've hired an illegal employees.
Okay, so you think it was not right for them to be sued because they outsourced the hiring of those cleaners to another subcontractor, and so they have no hand in it. So is that your argument?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you very much. Any other? Are you a him? Alberta, let me hear you. Whilst Alberta is speaking, Paddy Tete, get ready. Hey, today the Roberts is here. Roberts to get ready. So Alberta, let's listen to you. Christopher, get ready.
Hello, sir.
Go on, Alberta.
So, as Eric said, the same thing. Walmart gave the contract out to subcontractors, and they
Okay.
made the mistake of not paying their overtime. So they cannot, Walmart cannot be sued.
Okay, so they should rather sue the subcontractor.
Yes.
Oh, okay, all right. Kumsen. Christopher. And there is no right or
Hello,
wrong
sir.
answer. It depends
Yes,
on
sir.
how you do your arguments. Yes, go on.
Yes, sir, they cannot be sued.
They cannot be
As
sued.
we said, the contract was given to a
Okay.
subcontractor. And then the contractor will also look at how well the employer can work. And then the maybe maximum number of time the person can use to work because it's the work they are looking for. So
Okay.
if a subcontractor goes for a worker and is working for you, they cannot be sued. And if they want to sue too, they should sue the subcontractor.
Okay. Thank you. Francisca.
Sir, good morning.
Good morning. Go on.
Sir, I think they be sued. Okay, it's yes, because if they have given contracts to the subcontractor and they are employing for them, they should also do their background check of the employees that are working in their company. So I'll set an example. A company is here called Benzema Chloe was contracted to work for Adamos Resource, and some department didn't do a background checks on those people that were brought in. Others did, and some guys were sacked. They said they don't need them, looking at their records and some other things. So I think that the company should also do a little background check on the people that the subcontractor brought in to work for them. That's
Thank you very much. And that's exactly the reason why they were sued. Meaning, say moye labor, not labor law, moye company law, any business law. If you came across buyer beware, seller beware, caveat emptor, caveat vindictor. So the fact that you have outsourced a section of your operations to be handled by a subcontractor or a third party does not mean that your criminal be a betina why you hands are my criminal about the system sikako. Like the example I'm giving about the banks. The example I'm giving about the banks. Hello, can you hear me? The example I gave that I know there's a man who recruits tellers for the banks, like Zenith Bank, Nadia. So those of you that are saying it was not right for the Walmart to be sued, are you trying to say that if the tellers that have been brought by the subcontractor and working for the bank start siphoning people's money, and the customers get to find out that it is the subcontractor that the injured party is going to sue. Is that the argument people are making? Do you get the drift of what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So it's
Hello,
all
sir.
yeah. Hello.
So now, this question, so bank a boka, watch one other bank no, if I know how by.
What is the bank here? There.
So bank tell us or mobile car, watch man so if I know one.
You won't say you are comparing apples and oranges. I'm saying nipa kono e recruit tellers and my bank no. Nasa wakwa teller bi amana ba be di obi sika. Me na ye di misika na me ba. It is the bank that I gave my money to, and as I came to deposit my money in the bank, I me mfa ho ne say subcontractor bi na ama ono kofa obi a o betima ba ye adwuma na ma no wetimi reduce wetimi cut down costs or something of that sort. In the same vein, if such security example now, man, this is how it will work. Assuming you go and pick a particular security person who is even a criminal, and he ends up bringing his gang to come and siphon money from the bank. At the end of the day, injured customers, when we come in, and I say when we are complaining, we will be suing the bank for our monies lost. And it is not the subcontractor, and I said the security person who did that. Do you get the argument?
Yes, sir.
Because at the end of the
Yes,
day,
sir, I get it, but sir.
Yes,
Hello,
go
sir.
on.
Please, using the same security man, for instance, maybe I've gone to park my car at the entrance of the bank and then entering, and maybe upon return, and I see that a thief has broken into the car.
Okay.
Then maybe I'll say that the security man hasn't done the work, his work well. And I think that maybe the company can equally inform the assault this thing. That maybe this is what, maybe for instance, your security man wasn't vigilant, or maybe he was even sleeping on duty. That's why maybe this thing happened.
Okay.
So in that relation to how do you see it, or in that context?
I would say these days, you're afraid maybe is this an occupier? Oh, I'm more aware before it in law. I think occupier say, there is a word for it. These days, only filling stations, most of the bank premises now they have those notices properly labeled and displayed over there. Your friend is a occupier, say clemency, you say occupier, baby. What it means is that even though there is a security man over there, it is not everywhere within the bank premises that you can park anyhow. You have to park closer to where the security post or where the security personnel may be located. Those notices say when you leave your goods in your car and something happens to it, it is at your own expense. I don't know if you've come across some of these notices before. That when you leave your goods,
yes, sir,
or if you leave your belongings in your car and eventually it gets damaged, it is at your own expense. If I'm a friend, the word for it is, I think, occupier clemency will say occupier BB. You are looking for the right word. What that simply means is that the fact that a security man is there does not mean the security man is use the word back. Say oye. Say nothing can go unescaped under his nose. Oh no, so the security man may be there, but still a thief can come in and rob the whole place. What I say. So it depends on the situation that we are analyzing. But the problem actually arises when the security person that is supposed to be providing the security actually ends up stealing from the bank and also engaging in some form of problem behaviors. You can't. It is not only the outsourcing person, the outsource agent that will be held responsible, but the organization as an entity will also equally be held responsible by the customers that are affected. Alberta Ando.
Hello, sir.
Alberta.
Sir, for instance, talking about this little thing that maybe the Walmart, before outsourcing the contract to others, he made it, they made something like terms and conditions. They applied terms and conditions that if anything comes up, I will not be held responsible. So with that one too, will Walmart be sued or only the contractor will be sued?
Okay, so it depends on the sort of agreement that was reached between Walmart and the subcontractor. And it also depends on how far Walmart went to validate all the workforce that was being provided by the subcontractor. So the bottom line is that you shouldn't be hello, can you hear me? Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, but please, you are breaking.
Okay, so I was saying that it depends on the terms of contract that was agreed upon between Walmart and the subcontractor, and it also depends on the due diligence that Walmart as an entity did to validate all the workforce that was being supplied by your friend is saying the subcontractor. Now, basic HR practice is that anytime you are bringing someone into your premises to be working for you in a capacity as an employee, you have to do background checks so that you don't end up contracting individuals that are minors, individuals that are kind of saying the minors kind of saying English in legal terms, you know. So at least they should be of sound mind and sound body, and also they should be having backgrounds that are fit for purpose. Now, if you do not do all these things and you assume that your subcontractor has done the work, and so you trust it, and it eventually backfires, the one who is going to sue you for damages, and in fact, this one, it ended up being a class action because don't forget, it is the bureaus that are the federal agents that are actually after Walmart. Into no one besa attending these illegal immigrants, you know, for lesser sentencing and any lesser, for lesser sentencing, you know, for them to turn against the company for actually evading taxes and also engaging in some more practices which are against their laid down procedures. Okay, so it depends on some of these things. Also the mental disorder. Okay, so you can say mental disorder, but that is not, I think, all right. Any other question?
So another question.
Word na me pen your friend occupiers liability. Or my company law, a business law, you can't even remind me. Occupiers liability. Into Oko Pakoka, our filling station be several quacoto. Okakoto way. Okoto fuel. Na afe. I mean, Fasama, Ija Tomua. Are you the one who is supposed to cater for the damaged car? And I say it is because it is that of the filling station where the fire broke out into. They are supposed to take care of it. All those fall within the ambit of what we call occupiers liability. So depending on the quantum of insurance and the degree of insurance that has been established by the filling station, you may or may not receive any form of damages for your car that has been destroyed. The same applies to maybe a wako takrademo wapake oka si hono. Oko inside by and na akronfo break into your car. Do you complain to the owners of the mall that your car has been broken into and for them to reimburse whatever you've lost? And I say you have to take liability for whatever has happened. All those things borders on occupiers liability, and that's the word I was looking for. Okay. So that is about outsourcing. Now, offshoring. Offshoring simply means, how many minutes do we have? Okay, about 10. Let me quickly wrap up. Offshoring simply means that you are moving or exporting tasks and jobs to countries where labor costs are significantly less than comparatively costs in the parent country. In Namibia, you have to say Toyota. These days, automobiles back when Toyota. I think Toyota is here. Benz too is here. So when we say Benz or Toyota is using offshoring as a strategy to cut down costs, it simply means that they may produce the parts of the vehicle and ship them to Ghana for it to be assembled, because the labor cost that will be incurred in assembling and also manufacturing the car in Ghana will be relatively cheap as compared to that of maybe US or UK or Germany. So when that happens, then you have what we call offshoring. Now, offshoring has its own pluses and minuses. Offshoring has its own pluses and minuses. The advantage is that the company may end up saving huge sums of money in terms of cost, because you will be getting cheaper labor and perhaps cheaper raw materials in terms of producing the same goods and services. Then offshoring in the form of, I don't know if you've come across what we call backroom office, back offices and call centers. So those of you that have patronized the services of, let's say, Amazon, eBay, and all those e-commerce platforms, when you make a request or if you make an order for a product, and maybe you want to do a follow-up by calling them for some specifications to be clearly ironed out, the call does not go directly to, depending on the location of the product, if it is US or UK, the call will not go directly to UK or US, but rather they have their call centers that are set up in places like India and Indonesia, particularly India, because India is very much educated and fluent when it comes to the use of the English language in communication and education. For that reason, most of these back offices in terms of accounting, computer programming, IT staffs, and call centers have been set up in India. So you'll be in US, you make an order for, let's say, Burger King or McDonald's, and the call will go to India because those that will be receiving the orders in India will be paid a peanut, but which is much appreciated and construed as substantial in that particular context. Whereas if you had done the same call to an American citizen to receive and pick your order, the amount of money that may be incurred by McDonald's or Burger King may be sometimes 5 times higher than how much will be taken by the Indian person who will be taking the order. So offshoring has its own pluses and minuses. Some of the advantages that you may be saving costs, and you may also be extending workday to a 24-hour continuous. So these days, right from Alibaba to any of those e-commerce platforms, you can call them 24 hours and someone will be at the end of the line to receive your call, simply because they have call centers that have been arranged across the Asian economies to be attending to some of their clients' demands. So these are the advantages that comes with offshoring, when you are able to shift some aspect of your production to an offsite where the cost can be reduced. Now, the disadvantage is that the first one, you can imagine speaking, an American speaking to an Indian just to order for a Big Mac or McDonald's and answer any of the Burger King products. Now, accent is a problem here because the American accents, the Indian speaks English with a particular accent, and some of the tonations may not be readily understood by this American or this British who is making the order. So that can be a little bit frustration, the language and the accent issue. So if you don't take care, you may gradually lose some of your customers because they are being attended by individuals whose style of communicating is not welcoming. Then another disadvantage is that you may be losing your jobs to foreign markets. In other words, you are just shipping your jobs to other economies for them to rather flourish, whilst your citizens and your labor force may be struggling to get jobs. So these call centers and backroom offices, which are being shipped to China, Indonesia, and India, are all jobs that if they were to be mounted in US or maybe in UK, they could have given some people some form of source of livelihood. Then transfer of technical knowledge. The more you offshore your services to a foreign counterpart for them to be executing it for a meager fee, over time you realize that the technical knowledge which is required in performing that particular task will be fading out from your system. In other words, very few people may end up specializing in such an area because there will be no incentive to be doing so. Even when you do so, the job can easily be performed at a cheaper rate elsewhere. And so why do you need to go and concentrate on specialize in an area which is gradually becoming redundant. So the technical knowledge will be transferred elsewhere. Demoralizing. It may also end up demoralizing those whose area of specialization is being offshored. In other words, individuals that have the know-how to execute the task but are bypassed and overlooked will feel some level of demotivation, and that might not augur well for the establishment. And public image or customer loyalty concerns. So the image of the country, which is predominantly relying on the expertise of an offshore agent to carry out its goods and services, may gradually soil, in the sense that it will come across as if these offshore agents are not available, they will never be able to survive. So it can be construed that such a gesture will mean you are almost always dependent on others in order for certain tasks to be executed. And that may not augur well for a company that wants to, a country or an institution that wants to boast as being a giant player in the global economy. Mergers and acquisition. So that is the last thing we will look at. Mergers and acquisition. So we get mergers, and I say mergers simply means that two or more companies are coming together and consolidating their culture, their strategies, and their resources in order to have a larger share of the market in which they are operating. So a typical example is in Ghana here will be the merger between Airtel and Tigo. Apart from Airtel Tigo, which other company can you think about as merger? So our banks now, if you can boom, the consolidated banks. So those ones, they actually merged them and consolidated their activities. Now, acquisition is different from merging. In acquisition, what happens is that a well-to-do firm or organization may identify a struggling firm in the same community of practice. Sometimes it may not necessarily be a struggling firm, but it may be a firm that is competing with it. But in order to cut out that competition or rival that exists in that community of practice, they may decide to approach the minor firm and buy it out. So the degree to which a firm buys out another firm out of business, and the firm that has been bought becomes part and parcel of the bigger firm, is called acquisition. Into acquisition, we say Absa now is a typical example of acquisition. So Absa was acquired, so Absa acquired all the assets and liabilities of Barclays Bank in Ghana. Even in the telecommunication industry, initially it was Tigo Bar first, man. Here from say, is it more use network na channel.
Buzz.
Thank you. One I can't say Buzz. Now, me calculating the aging. I said, no, you
But
see.
Bas.
Matter. Okay. Good. Bas. Sorry, Tigo started from there, Bas. Then eventually, the more profit, no more pen, no more corner. And almost ton, almost remaining say no. Emma, after Bas, it came to what? Is it right from Bas to Tigo? And oh. From Bas, it came to what?
Ariba.
Oh, no. Ariba is
Ariba is
empty.
MTN.
Ariba is empty. But at least you get the drift I'm saying. So, Ariba was first, then it came to MTN. Maybe after Ariba, they became the buy and MTN.
Mobitel.
Hey, are you sure?
Hey, W.
Mobitel,
From
they ask,
Ariba
and
to
I hear you.
MTN.
Yeah, Mobitel.
Mobitel, they know. Ghana Telecom.
Mobitel no what that now.
Space phone.
Space phone. Why they can't say space phone? No? Hey, George.
Space phone.
Yeah, boy.
George, sir.
I'm off for sure. Space phone. Okay. So the baby boomers may not even understand or relate to some of the names you are calling.
George, space phone. Space phone, I thought it was just doing the space to space.
No.
Debbie share, it was a network. Those times in the space phone, not to say, and then both and security services were used, that was how the phone was like. So that would be. So it was initially space phone, then it was acquired by, I think, Ariba. Then from Ariba, MTN. And for Tigo, so it was from Bas, Nafe, Tigo for by acquired, and Nafe, Zain for, and in fact, Zain cried, it used to be Kasapa, and Zain used to be Kasapa.
Oh, sir.
Kasapa is different from
Kasapa
Zain.
is different.
Oh, really? So Zain
Kasapa
was what?
Came to Glow.
I see.
Zain is now Airtel.
No, so what was there before Zain came? Or Zain came as an entity on its own?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay, all right. So that is, those are some examples of the acquisition. Okay. And depending on the strategy that the firm wants to utilize to increase their level of competitiveness and ability to survive in the turbulent business environment, they may decide to merge or they may decide to acquire minor firms that are competing with them in order to clear them out of the way. Now, Ghana has a, I recently heard that so 7-Up, do you see 7-Up products in the market as far as the beverage industry is concerned? 7-Up. Hello.
Yeah.
By the way, my name is 7-Up. What am I moving?
Now 7-Up right now in the house. Yes.
Hey. What about Pepsi? Pepsi. Pepsi. I'm talking about the bottle one, the glass bottled one. Do you find some these days? Hello. Hello.
The old Pepsi.
When was the last time you saw Pepsi? I'm not talking about the canned ones, no, because the canned ones, some people smuggle them inside. I'm talking about the bottled ones.
Pepsi wɔ hɔ
But I
paa.
even saw some here yesterday.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Yes,
I even
it's
saw some
available.
yesterday.
Mhm.
Yes, sir.
Because I learned, I won't say they are actually in competition with Coca-Cola.
Coca-Cola.
Coca-Cola bottling company bought them out,
Yes, sir.
and then they decided to not produce them again. So I don't know if they started doing it there. Because on say has now by Obia Epe, so that be animal so of a cocoa. Cocoa outsider. Pepsi is also highly patronized over there. So the Coca-Cola saw that how do you call it? That threat, and for that matter, they decided to acquire it. So I'm using it as an example for the acquisition. And acquire no for some time now Oko markets Pepsi products in the system. They decided to place a freeze on the production of the Pepsi Cola beverages. But if they have started doing it again, then I said it is still underway. So that will be acquisition. Okay, when you go read about the role of HR in mergers and acquisition. So there are 4 main stages in mergers and acquisition, which include the pre-deal, the due diligence, the integration, and the implementation. These ones, they are straightforward. When you go, take your time and read them, okay?
Yes, sir.